likely to have a share of the market of around 0 or maybe even less than that. Well, Frank is taking on some pretty tough marketplaces, big urban areas, Norfolk, Virginia, Richmond, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Washington, Boston, and oh yeah, the New York metropolitan area. His lowest share of market in any one of those urban centers is 58%. Now, what's the magic? Purdue says, quite frankly, that he can't tell the difference between a Ferrari and a Fryer. He says it doesn't matter what the product or the service is, that there is no limit whatsoever to the amount of quality that can be added to anything. And in that simple, homely, old man fashion, Mr. Purdue says quite simply that if you believe in the unlimited ability to improve the quality of what you offer, and if you behave with total integrity in your business dealings, then all the rest of that stuff, market share, growth, and profitability, will take care of itself. That's the message from Salisbury, Maryland, and that's the message that's at the very heart of the Excellence Challenge. Well, let's look at the other side of the United States, a long way from Salisbury, Maryland. In December of last year, I went to Burbank, California, to visit a man by the name of Kelly Johnson. Kelly works for the Lockheed Company. In fact, took the word skunk work from Little Abner's comic strip and brought it to American industry, a skunk work being a half-licit, half-illicit, innovative activity at sort of the peripheries of the corporation. Well, Kelly's record is quite remarkable. One person, essentially, is responsible for about a third of what flies in the sky today. Right after the end of World War II, he developed the first of the military jets, the YP or the F-80. Subsequently responsible for the F-104, C-130, U-2, SR-71, and a whole handful of others. I mean, that's amazing enough, but what's much more significant is the story that lies behind it. For example, in one instance, Johnson got involved in an ailing satellite program. The program had been behind schedule by about 3 years, several 100% above budget. And in fact, when he first got involved, he found out that there were somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,271 inspectors working with a single subcontractor. The result of all this, a launch success rate of 12.5%. During the course of the next year, Johnson was able to modestly reduce that number of inspectors from 1,271 to 35. Get the thing back on schedule and increase simultaneously the launch effectiveness rate from 12.5% to 98%. In another case, the Air Force sent an arch rival of Lockheed's to talk with Johnson, forced him to talk with Johnson, reason being both were working on projects of equal magnitude and complexity, only slight difference. The arch competitor was behind schedule by 4 years, several 100% above budget, and had 3,750 people working on the project. Johnson was on schedule, slightly under budget, and had 126 people. And so my real point is, whether we are dealing with fryers and roasters in Salisbury, Maryland, or whether we are dealing with multi-billion-dollar, high-technology, integrated systems projects, the kind of improvement that is possible is not a percent or two, but thousands of percent. And as we go through this entire program, I would beg of you to keep in the back of your mind somewhere those contrast numbers I just used, 126 versus 3,750, because I think that's what's possible and possible everywhere. There's another twist to this story. Above all things, I happen to be a baseball fan, but even if you don't share my level of fanaticism or enthusiasm and just know the sport a little bit, you're probably well aware that for all practical purposes, minor league baseball died fully 25 years ago. Well, the message never quite made it to Louisville, Kentucky. It's a fellow down there by the name of A. Ray Smith, owns a franchise called the Louisville Cardinals. And last year, 25 years after the death of the sport, Mr. Smith outdrew in attendance 40% of Major League Baseball. And 25 years after the death of the sport, he exceeded the former all-time historical high minor league attendance record by over 100%. And what's the magic? Well, Mr. Smith is very clear. He says it's clean washrooms. And for those of you who attend athletic events of any sort, you'll know how non-trivial that is. Well, in fact, that really is our simple message, though we'll expand it as we go on. On the one hand, I beg of you to keep in mind those thousands of percents of improvement that I think are clearly possible anywhere. And then in the very next breath, I'm going to turn around and say, a la Mr. Smith and his toilets, that every single bit of those thousands of percents come from trivia or the mundane. Well, let me tell you exactly what I mean by that. At the end of 5 years of searching for excellence, I still have a question, and I think, in fact, it summarizes my entire 5 years' work. And that question, which I am totally unable to answer, is why in heaven's name, in what is now a $20 billion plus industry, has only Walt Disney Productions figured out how to keep a theme park clean? I mean, that shouldn't be magic, but it is. But it is. And where does that cleanliness come from? Well, it comes from a million things. And I would contend, for example, that it comes from stuff like the following. Walt Disney Productions has no customers. They have no clients. They simply have guests. Everyone who visits a park is called a guest. And if you're an insider to Disney, heaven help you should you ever fail to capitalize the letter G in guest if you write it down. Well, now you can write that off as trivia or dull or glib or what have you. I thought it was interesting but not earth-shaking, and then suddenly I started to think of it as earth-shaking, and I'll tell you when. A while back, I was taking a late-night flight from San Francisco to Denver, and we had an intermediate stop at Salt Lake City. We'd left San Francisco late, and so we actually were at the gate in Salt Lake no more than perhaps a minute or two. Well, as the Salt Lake passengers started to come on board, the head flight attendant turned around to her colleague, presumably thinking the rest of us were out of earshot, and said, "Here come the animals." Now, as one small business person said to me the other day, there are just a whole lot of things you can do to animals that you can't do to guests. And in fact, unfortunately, that's hardly an isolated incident. A lot of my work is done with retailers, and we all know the line there. Boy, the stores look great until 9:45 a.m. in the morning when the idiots come in and mess them up. In the world of high technology in Silicon Valley, unfortunately, it's exactly the same. The lament there goes, boy, we make fantastic products if only our customers had an IQ of over 45 and could really understand the beauty and the benefits of all the features we're offering. I call it all, in fact, thinly disguised contempt for the customer. And the capital G guest is the answer to that, or even simpler things, really. I think I've given maybe 200 presentations in the last couple of years where I've been joined by an executive of some company or other. In only 3 of those 150 or 200 incidents has one of those other speakers begun his or her remarks with the most magical 2 words in the English language. Thank you. Thank you to our customers in the audience. We appreciate your business. We hope we will continue to deserve it in the future. Now, is it a coincidence or is it not? All 3 of those people are executives of the International Business Machines Corporation. I think it not. In fact, I know that industry well, and I've said to many people, the only magic of the $40 billion giant IBM is in a $500 billion industry. They happen to be the only company that answers the phone. And that's what we find. So again, let's look at where we've been. I'm suggesting on the one hand, seek the thousands of percents. Well, in some respects, it adds up to the classic good news, bad news story. The good news is you can start tomorrow morning. The bad news is you'll never finish. J. Willard Marriott Sr. opened the first A&W root beer stand on the East Coast in 1928. 56 years later, at age 84, Mr. Marriott continues today in 1984 to personally read, unedited, every single customer complaint card from what is now in excess of a $3 billion operation. In other words, 56 years later, and he still doesn't think he's got service right. So you can get on with it tomorrow morning. There's no magic to this stuff. There's nothing that costs money. It's time, attention, and concern, which will be our next topic. Well, what it adds up to then, and what will really be the strong message that goes through this, and it's the reason we're putting together programs like this, is the following. I believe very sincerely that we are in the midst of the first serious revolution in thinking about managing in this country since at least the beginning of the World War II. 50 years since we've really rethought the way we manage our enterprises. And the words which will really underlie what we say throughout this program are new words that describe leadership, new words that describe the way we manage our enterprises. No longer the leader is cop, referee, devil's advocate, dispassionate analyst, naysayer, or pronouncer. But the new words that seem much more appropriate From the world of A. Ray Smith in baseball and Frank Perdue in chicken to the sophisticated world of Kelly Johnson,